What's up, heathens? How y'all doing? I'm the Godless Engineer, and tonight I figured I'd dust off the call-in show number that I've got, and I thought that I'd let you guys call in and talk to me live if you wanted to. Currently, we don't have anybody. Well, we got one caller that's in queue already. If you want to call in and talk to me about whether or not God existed or whether or not Jesus existed, whether he was born, that's the kind of the first thing that I kind of wanted to touch on there was, Jesus probably wasn't born. And the reason why I titled the show like I did is because obviously there's two different questions talking about whether or not Jesus was born. And a lot of people get confused, like as far as mythicism goes, because what they'll think is that, oh, well, yeah, Jesus wasn't born in a nativity. The nativity story is bullshit. Like, that's not true or anything like that. And so that's the first thing that people go to. It's like, obviously that's false. Well, I'm taking a much more, a much deeper stance in that I'm saying he wasn't born at all. For anybody that doesn't know about the mythicist position, that's a rejection of the idea that he was a historical figure. Most likely, saying that he probably didn't exist as a historical figure. And there's a lot of misinformation that's being thrown around out there from people who apparently can't read words on a page. And so I kind of wanted to do a little bit of an outreach. If anybody has any questions, any problems with the idea of mythicism or anything like that, totally here for people to call in and talk to me about it. I'd really love to know why you're convinced that a Jesus is historical. Prophet Azad in the chat saying, what are you, some kind of mythicist? And yeah, I am. I am a mythicist. Essentially, for those of you that don't already know, which apparently that caller was like, fuck this shit. I'm not here. I'm not here to talk about this bullshit. But anyways, so mythicism, we say that most likely Jesus didn't exist as a historical figure, and this is due to a lack of evidence that solidifies this idea that he was a historical figure. And this is taking a look at all of the available evidence to us, including Jewish background information from the Hellenistic period, from Hellenistic pagan religions, the mystery cults that existed around that time, and also cultural norms that were all over the place, which my headset is apparently going to die. Shit, I'm going to have to switch to my big-ass headset here. Hold on. Power on. Huh? Oh. He could just toss it. Okay. So apparently it did not charge my headset, which kind of sucks. So now I've got this big ass headset on right now. So please pardon the unprofessionalness of this live stream right now. But anyways, so that's all. Like, that's background information. The rank Raglan mythotype is used in the argument, for a mythical Jesus, but it's used in the argument to say that, well, Jesus fits this particular class, and so we are going to be analyzing Jesus in this particular class of highly mythologized savior figures in the Mediterranean, like Hellenistic area. And so analyzing Jesus from that particular point of view, given the Jewish background, the Greek background, or Hellenistic background, and the mystery cult background from different religions that were in the area, we say that, oh, Jesus probably didn't exist. And so that's what that's about. We got Jonathan Hanachek with a... Let me turn on notifications. It was going crazy earlier with notifications. But we get Jonathan Hanachek who says, "What's up, mafiosos and GE and Miss KC? I hope everybody's doing great. And GE, please sing Technical Problems with GE, sponsored by me." So, technical problems with GE. So we don't have anybody calling in just yet. So I guess I will continue talking about how Jesus most likely wasn't born. If you want to call in, we've got 3 lines open. I only opened up 3 lines. We got 3 lines open. So if you want to call in and if you want to talk to me about why you believe that Jesus existed, I would really, I'd really love to hear what y'all think. But can't. Oh well. Hey there, Drew's Book Reviews. Let me see. I'm gonna share this out. I'm gonna put it in maybe some Facebook groups or something like that. I don't know. Or I could just put it up here. Hold on. I got memes that I can put up that are sure to rustle the jimmies of Facebook. Let's see, where is it at? There it is. Let's see. All right. There, I'm gonna post it on my personal timeline. And I could probably post it. I'll post it in just one of these groups. Let me get the, let's see, what's the number? This one. So if you're international, like you're not based in the United States, you can use the link there in the description that's called Godless Engineer. And you can call me even if you're overseas. And I don't think it'll cost you any money to do that. It just costs me money. Let's see. All right, there we go. We got it posted right there. I was frantically trying to get shit together before going live. We've been driving all day, so we actually went out and we were able to drive and see some friends. Had a chat. No, I don't want people to chat with me. Or you can use that. Okay. Since we still don't have any callers because people that are watching either already agree with me that Jesus existed or don't want to start a fight, I'm not going to fight you over this, but I love having good discussions. I love, having engaging discussions and honest discussions about this topic because I feel like not a lot of people are actually engaging in this topic. Honestly, it's an interesting topic to me because primarily because, I've never really seen a big appeal. Like it's never appealed to me to like have intense discussions over whether or not the magical form of Jesus, the magical form of Jesus, it existed. Like a lot of people want to focus on the magic of the stories, and the magic of the stories are not interesting to me because the magic that's contained in the Gospels are derived from the Old Testament. Like there's Old Testament in stories and stuff that the Gospel writers used in order to manufacture the stories that are in the Gospels. Mr. Mortal Raw in the chat there, I'd love for you to call in and have a chat about Josephus and Tacitus. Mr. Mortal Raw in the comments said, "I am of the viewpoint that a first century Jewish man called Jesus was in that a historical person and existed. My evidence, from what I know, Josephus and Tacitus." Let's see. Mark Fernkoff says, "Can you please sing Happy Birthday to Henry Black? He's 5 years old today." Is Henry watching? I'm gonna have to watch my mouth. I don't want to curse in front of somebody else's 5-year-old. All right. And I'll tell you a sweet story right after I get done with this. But okay, here we go. This is for Henry Black. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to Henry Black. Happy birthday to you. That was especially dreadful. So the sweet story is that I know most people don't know my life, but my dad, every birthday that I have, so I just had a birthday. Every birthday he calls me and he sings horribly, but in the sweetest way to me every single birthday. For 39 years he's done that. Well, I mean, I guess I don't remember like 5 years old, but he's done that for every birthday I've had that I can remember. And so I like doing that for other people because it was one of the best things for me growing up was having that. Even though he was a horrible singer. Henry says, "What the hell was that? Please don't do that again." We do it every birthday here or there, Henry. But anyways, so there's just a little bit of a background about me. There you go, Mark. I appreciate that. Audie says Josephus always claimed giants existed and that a glass-like sky dome firmament existed. His credibility isn't very good. So that's not traditionally how I argue against Josephus. But I would love. I'm not gonna make any arguments against anything unless somebody calls in. I'm 14 and I'm massively socially anxious and have bad social anxiety. Okay, that's fine, Mr. Mortal. I didn't know all that about you, but it's fine if you don't want to call in. But if somebody else would like to call in and talk about Josephus and Tacitus, I'd really love for that to happen. Still have all 3 lines open. And I don't know if I should expect anybody to call in tonight. It would probably just be me sitting here talking about mythicism for a bit. I'd love to have somebody call in. I'd put it out on to the Facebook community out there, and I'm. Yeah, I know, right? That's probably me. Hold on, you know what? Thanks for following the page. Let's see. I have 130,000 people on my Facebook page. I don't know if y'all know I'm on Facebook, but I have a substantial following, relatively substantial following on Facebook. And so what I think I'm going to do, I've posted this meme before, but since we're in the mood for, well, fuck me. Hold on. Oh, sorry there, Blake. Yeah, I think his name was Blake. I'm so flustered. Let's see if we can copy this and put it up here like this. Open. Nope, not open that. Thank you very much. Right there. Okay. There we go. Nope, I need this guy. And I shut it down. Okay, there we go. All right. Put it on the Facebook page. Let's go. There's so many people on the Facebook page that got banned recently because they're very anti-trans, and we don't tolerate that on the fucking page. Let's see, Eric G, call in. We're all awkward and anxious. I don't think any of us would give you any trouble over that. No, we wouldn't. Only if you're comfortable. Yeah, I don't want to force anybody, obviously, to call in if you're not comfortable, calling in and stuff. So, y'all, you're perfectly fine if you don't want to call in. Cheers from Spain. Hey there, Peter Packiam, from Spain. And just a reminder to anybody that isn't stateside, you can use the link in the description to call. It's a short link, so I mean it'll just automatically direct you to the GE page, I believe. If there's a problem with that, y'all just let me know and I'll replace it with the actual link, but it should work fine. So I put it out on the page. Let's see if we get somebody in. There was somebody that called in, but then, like I said, they were like, "Fuck this shit." All right, so let's talk about mythicism, huh? Jonathan says, "What are your best proofs that Jesus never could have existed?" Well, it's not that Jesus could have never existed. I think that there's a possibility he could have existed, but I feel like the evidence it points in a different direction, mainly that Jesus was a fabrication of early first century, either BCE or CE Jews who were trying to make sense of why the Messiah did not come. They were expecting Messiah to come. There were multiple groups of Jews that had these timetables for the Messiah to come and show up. And when he didn't come, they had to figure out why he did not. And so maybe we can get back to this, Jonathan. We do have a call. Andrew from Florida is calling in. What up, Andrew? How you doing?
What's up, heathens?
How you doing, Andrew?
Awesome.
Yeah? What are you up to?
Chilling in my house.
Okay.
My wife and kids are gone for the night.
Oh, that's good? Like, this could be a weird situation here. They're gone for the night. Either something got fucked up and they left, or they're just out visiting somebody.
No, they're chilling with my mom. It's good. It's cool. They're chilling with my mom.
Good.
So instead of drinking alcohol, I decided to do something a little healthier, argue about Jesus.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Don't mix the alcohol and arguing about Jesus. That could not end well. But you do have a specific argument that you want to talk about. So what is that?
Yeah. Jesus' brother existed. And there's greater evidence for that than Jesus himself outside of the Bible. So, because there's a stronger historical case for his brother, that adds credibility to Jesus' existence. You can't have a brother if you don't exist. So
are you
I'm
sure
talking about
that?
James the Judge.
Well, hold on. So are you sure that somebody can't like somebody can't be claimed to be a brother, but not actually be a brother?
Sorry?
Well, so
wait, you can claim it. Yeah, you can claim it. Yes.
Right. So do we have direct evidence from James himself of him saying, "Yeah, I was his blood relative"?
No, not James himself, but from two individuals.
Two individuals.
Or one knew him individually.
Okay.
And one did not know him.
Okay. So let's start with one. I'm guessing that you're referencing Paul first with knowing him personally, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So can somebody be mistaken about somebody being the brother of somebody?
Yeah.
Okay. So he could be mistaken. That's one possible alternative explanation. He could just be mistaken about this James fuck being Jesus' brother, right?
Yeah, but I mean, we could be mistaken about the moon landing. Doesn't mean
I don't think
didn't
so.
happen.
No, well, no. So the moon landing. I'm wondering? Can you tell me what the big difference between the moon landing and claiming somebody is a brother of somebody? Like, where's the difference in the evidence for that?
No, I'm not saying that the evidence for them are the same. I'm saying that according to your logic, like you can be mistaken about that.
Well, you see,
it doesn't really falsify.
Right. Well, so this is where the false equivalence comes in, because you're equivocating both of these situations, but the evidence for both of these situations are not equivalent. Like they're totally different. Like for instance, with the moon landing, you can definitely independently verify that we landed on the moon. You can independently verify that humans have been on the moon, for one, by shooting a laser to the moon, and you can receive a reflection of that laser back. So I mean, there's multiple ways in which we can verify that. But as far as verifying that somebody is the brother of somebody else, the only way that we really have the ability to do that is to do a DNA test, right?
Yeah, to verify it according to the amount of evidence that is as good as the moon landing evidence.
Right. So
Correct.
would you say that it's not exactly fair to compare those two situations? Like, would it not be more fair to say that, like, oh, this guy claims to be the brother of Perseus, this guy claims to be the brother of Jesus? How are we going to make the determination that those are truthful statements?
Well, you use historical criteria, and the only historical criteria you have are that you can really do anything with are the writings of people who lived thousands of years ago. That's the only way you can verify people's existence who lived that far back.
Okay. And that's perfectly fine. I'm perfectly fine using like testimony, written testimony or whatnot. In this case, the written testimony that we have that we're examining first is Paul. Now, Paul says in Galatians 1:19, which is what you're talking about, that that he saw none of the other apostles except for Peter and this other guy named James, a brother of the Lord, right?
Yes.
All right. What does it mean to be a brother of the Lord? Does like to be Lord, does that mean that Jesus was before Jesus died or after Jesus died? In Paul's theology.
They thought he was Lord after Jesus died, and they believed that he rose from the dead.
Right. And
that he became Lord.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, it's just after the resurrection, they believed that he is the Lord because he was risen up to heaven.
All right. So can you make the determination for me that distinguishes brother of the Lord as only referring to Jesus before he died?
No.
Okay. So this brother of the Lord is a title that relates a person to the resurrected and ascended Jesus, correct?
Yes.
Okay. How is that a blood relation?
Because there's no other, from my understanding, there's no other individual to which Paul particularly says the brother of the Lord. Like, I don't see anybody else given that special title. He doesn't talk about Peter that way.
Well, right, because
or other Christians.
Because Peter is an apostle.
Yes.
Would you agree that you would reference an apostle of Jesus differently from a general Christian?
Yes. Can I give the but?
Can you? I mean, do all the but you want.
Yes, but James wasn't just a regular Christian. He was the leader of the Jerusalem church.
Well, see, this is a misunderstanding between the James that occurs in Galatians 1 and the James that occurs in Galatians 2, who's known as the pillar. Scholars have, combed these verses and analyzed the grammar of them in the Greek, and have determined that the James that's being spoken of in Galatians 1:19 is actually different from the James in Galatians 2 that's known as the pillar. So those are actually two different James, unless you're making the argument that James was a unique name that was only given to one person in the Christian community in the first century.
Well, there was an apostle named James, right? One of the three top guys, but Acts 15 speaks of James, the leader, right? The leader of the church.
The pillar. But what I'm saying is that this is a general Christian named James. Do you can you recall how Paul refers to fellow Christians at the time? He didn't have the word Christian. He didn't call each other Christians. So this Paul refer to fellow people that believed in Jesus?
In multiple different ways, but
No. It's not multiple different ways. He has one
okay,
particular way that he refers to other Christians.
sure, okay. What
He calls
he
them
calls them brothers in the Lord?
and brothers and sisters, right? So
Yeah.
the Greek word that's used in the brother of the Lord phrase there uses a word for brother or relation, this kind of relationship that could mean either blood relation or fictive kinship. And it was most commonly used in cults like Christianity was to refer to fictive kinships that people in that community referred to each other as. So like they built these fictive kinships. It was part of this whole new family theology. In fact, if you look in Paul's theology, you'll find that he has this theology about the family of God where Jesus is the firstborn of many brethren, and that when you become a baptized Christian, you become inducted into the family of God, thereby becoming a brother or sister to Jesus in his theology. Now, you can flesh this out a little bit more if you go to... it's the other reference to brothers of the Lord. I want to say it's like 1 Corinthians something or another.
You have been blessed by Christ. Now go forth and suck my dong.
I got a notification. So if you go there, when they're saying brothers of the Lord as like a group of people that are known brothers of the Lord, in that same passage, you actually have the female version of the same word for brother, but to refer to fellow believing wives. So basically, Paul is sitting there being like, that these apostles, and they have wives that are fellow Christians, so sisters, right? And then in the same sentence, you have the same phrase, brothers of the Lord, right? And so it's hard to make such a specially pleading argument that, oh, in this one case it was talking about fellow Christian women, but in this other case it's definitely talking about blood relation. Do you see how it gets a little bit complicated with Paul's theology of the family of God?
It can, but it can, right? If you're saying all Christians are your brothers, and then you refer to a Christian, I can see why some people would be confused with that. It's just that the way Paul singles out James here, he doesn't single out any Christian in this way. He lumps him in with the other apostles, saying, "I saw none of the other apostles, only James, the Lord's brother." And there's an individual in Acts 15 who seems to be the leader of the Jerusalem church, even not even Peter, but James, like above the apostles. And so that gets into James Tabor's argument that he gave in the Jesus dynasty, that they believed in blood heritage, relatives, like they passed down the monarchy through blood relation. Descendants, or you have to be related to the person.
So did Paul write Acts?
He did not write Acts.
Okay, so it's safe to say that however the author that wrote Acts used words doesn't necessarily factor into how Paul would have written or used words, especially words that have two different meanings, right? Like if we were to analyze Paul's work around the word adelphos and see how Paul used that word in his writings, don't you think that is a far stronger assessment than comparing it to historical fiction of Acts?
I don't want to misrepresent you. You're saying they're using different words.
No,
because they have different writing styles.
No. Well, I'm saying that they're two different authors, and each author uses each author is going to use the Greek language in a way that's very specific to that author. That's, for instance, that's how we know that Paul didn't write the pastoral epistles. That would be 1st and 2nd Timothy and Titus. That we know that Paul didn't write those because they're written differently, even though they're using the same like language.
Yeah,
they're written differently.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, so Paul is writing using words in a specific way. When we analyze how he uses adelphos and also his theology around the family of God, it doesn't make a lot of sense to specially plead for these particular situations. Now, I've already said that the James in Galatians 1:19 is different than James the Pillar. So this is a totally different character, right, in the story. It's a different character. Second of all, the grammar of that section, like the Greek grammar. Now, I've even had people that speak Greek, like on my chat, like as their native tongue, and even in the type of Greek that the Gospels are written in, they have verified the grammar here excludes James as being an apostle. So the grammar of 1:19 specifically says that he didn't see any other apostles, or he saw Peter and none of the other apostles, and then with the exception of this other Christian named James. Is what that means. And how he refers to fellow Christians are brothers, sisters, brothers of the Lord. So like that's far more parsimonious to me than to specially plead for some kind of blood relation in Paul.
Okay. Verse 2, Paul uses that language of brothers and sisters as Christians, like the family theology. He uses it in verse 2, in the beginning of this passage. And
Right.
all the brothers and sisters with me.
Right.
It sounds different. I mean, I don't know what the exact Greek word there is, but even if it was the same Greek word, he seems to use it differently than in 19 as referring to just a single individual instead of referring to my general brothers and sisters. But
how do you determine how he's using it? How do you know he's not speaking to like family members there? How do you like make it like he uses the same Greek word in both places? So, also I'd want you to reflect on how I started out the conversation by making the determination between when Jesus became the Lord and, you know, how that would affect like that title, brother of the Lord. Why, like if he was a literal blood relation, I think it would be far stronger and more direct to say the brother of Jesus. But that's not what he says. He says brother of the Lord.
Yes. And so because of that, you're saying it's not a blood brother. Because he called him Lord.
I'm saying what my technical position is. I'm not saying one way or the other. What I'm saying is that both explanations fit the data that we have and therefore can't be used for either position. So I'm saying here's an alternative idea that also explains the evidence that we have. Just as good as as the assumption that it's talking about a blood relation.
Okay. Sure. But it doesn't. It could be that, right? It could be just a fellow Christian. Which is why it just seems weird to me why he would single him out among the other apostles and particularly just call him the brother of the Lord. I don't see.
He wasn't an apostle.
I don't see him doing that to any other Christian. Right, he's not an apostle, but grouped him in with the other apostles.
He didn't.
I don't see him doing that with any other Christian.
So what in Galatians 1, what's happening is that Paul is going to Jerusalem, and it's if you read at the very beginning of that and start in verse 11, he's very specific about where he gets his information from, and it's not from any kind of human source. He totally cuts himself off from any human source, and so it becomes very important that he carefully document everybody that he came into contact with when he went to Jerusalem. So he goes to Jerusalem and he sees Peter, Cephas, and he also sees this other Christian named James. And so he's listing off the two people that he sees while in Jerusalem. That way his gospel can be, free of any kind of, I'm trying to think of a word here.
Human tampering.
Yeah, from human tampering, from being spoiled by any kind of human like interaction with the story or the gospel. Influence, that's the word I was looking for. Influence, any human influence. And so he's recording who he saw there. And so this brother of the Lord, he talks about, I mean, that's just, in my view, that's just another general Christian. But I acknowledge that you can make a coherent argument that it was a blood relative due to the Greek words that are used. And it really just depends on what way Paul was using that word. But for me, all this means is that the sentence is too vague. We can't really determine for sure what Paul's talking about here, and is therefore not usable for either position.
Correct. It doesn't definitively say one or the other. So and I agree with you that it doesn't. It can be generally a vague, just another Christian. I just think it's weird that so my question to you, this is a genuine question to you. Is there another? To me, it feels weird that he singles a Christian out like this. Is there any other Christian in the New Testament which Paul says, I saw these Christians, and then so and so, the brother of the Lord? Is there any other Christian in the New Testament who he singles out like that?
Well, I mean, he singles out the brothers of the Lord, so it's like a group. How many brothers do you think that Jesus had?
I don't know, because the Gospel in Mark it doesn't really tell us how many. Jesus's mother and brothers came, and that's it. Like, we don't have a number.
Well, I mean, that comes in Mark, and Mark's fictional along with the other Gospels. So, I mean, that's not really useful to us. The only call to multiple brothers is this one in, I believe it's Corinthians 9. I don't remember off the top of my head, but Paul does use the word adelphos in other places to refer to brothers, and specifically in relation to people that are not his personal brother. Like, I don't think we know anything about any actual blood relation with others. As far as Paul goes, but he does reference, like, I believe he references maybe Titus as a brother. I used to have like a list down. I'll see if I can find it real quick, but I know so that's Paul, and it really kind of determines on how you interpret Paul, like using the word adelphos and referring to fellow Christians as brothers and sisters. And I think that requiring a hyper-specific phrase in order to do the comparison is going a little bit too far, because I think that you really just have to look at how Paul refers to other fellow Christians using familial language, and then also compare it to the Christian comparing it to the theology of the family of God that Paul has, which, in my opinion, just sort of muddies the water on the topic in general.
Yeah, you can do that. You can look at all the references. I can just give one example in Romans 16. He lists a bunch of Christians, and he says, "Dear friend in the Lord, co-worker in Christ," and in Romans 16:1, I commend you to our sister Phoebe, a deacon of the church. So you can tell when he's using language that refers to that family theology. It just, right. In this passage, it just seems odd. Would you agree? It seems odd. Like, he doesn't do it anywhere else like this. It seems unique.
No, I mean, it doesn't seem unique to me, because saying that somebody is a brother of the Lord is quite literally a fictive title, because it only applies to Jesus after he resurrects from the dead. That's the only time that it applies to Jesus as far as Paul's concerned.
Okay. I guess let's look at. Okay, I don't have anything else on that. I don't want to, beat a dead horse.
Right. No, I got you. I do have another call in queue, and I'm to the caller that's waiting. So sorry you're having to wait so long. I know that you wanted to talk about the Josephus reference as far as James goes, right?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
we could talk about that really quick,
We
but I don't want to spend too much time on it. But we could talk about it for a minute.
okay. Um, yeah, it's in book. You probably know the passage already. In the Antiquities of the Jews, book 20, chapter 9.
Yep, I do.
Uh, yeah. So Theseus was now dead, and Albinus was but upon the road. He assembled the Sanhedrin of judges, brought before them the brother of Jesus, who was called Christ, whose name was James, and some others, or some of his companions. So you're saying this does not refer to Jesus's brother, or you're saying do you even think James existed at all? Like there was an individual named James here, or was that made up too?
Well, I mean, so I feel like the James that's mentioned in Josephus did exist, just like the James mentioned in 119 existed, as well as in chapter 2 of Galatians. So I mean, I think they all existed. It's just in what way did they exist in relation to Jesus? Can you tell me, for what reason is James killed in that passage?
For what reason?
Right.
Accusations.
Okay.
He formed accusations against them as breakers of the law. He delivered them to be stoned.
Right, breakers of the law, and we don't have any specific, like, we don't have any specific information about what kind of law this person broke, right?
No.
Well, like for instance, Josephus doesn't say, "Oh, he was talking about Jesus and his sacrifice, and so we killed him for it." Like it doesn't give us that. It's just, "Oh, he broke the law." So there's a wide room there for different interpretations, right?
Yeah. And in the first century, like a lot of Christians were killed. If I assume you agree with that.
Well, yeah, but I mean,
the historical argument makes it more likely that there was a Christian killed named James.
Well, I mean, I don't know. I don't know that he was a Christian, because for one thing, the person that killed him was, he was, I get not really the head of the Sanhedrin, but he was a Jewish elite who was, who concocted, false claims against this James just so that he could kill him. Right. And then when this the dude that killed James, when I believe it was his dad, maybe, I believe it was his dad or somebody with more authority found out that he had concocted this thing to kill James. And so in order to pay retribution back to pay retribution back for the illegal murder of this James, they put Jesus ben Damnius in the spot of the high priest. That's what the story is. Now, my argument against that is that it's an accidental interpolation. The who was called Christ is just it's grammatically the same as a marginal note that you can find throughout various scribal books where scribes were used in order to copy the books, and so grammatically it matches that. Also, it's very uncharacteristic of Josephus in this passage to just say who was called Christ and not tell his Gentile audience what the fuck a Christ was. Like, it just seems to come out of nowhere. I mean, if you think that the Testimonium Flavianum was there, which, I mean, if you wanted to assume that, let's go ahead and do that. You would expect to see him make a callback to that, so like a reference back, so that people can be reminded of what they're talking about, what he's talking about here. But we don't actually find that. And if the testimonium wasn't there, then we should see some kind of exposition about what a Christ was, why it was important to identify this Jesus as the Christ, and all this other stuff. And so what I think happened, well, what I'm convinced by is there being a marginal note because a scribe thought that it was miscopied, and so they put who was called Christ instead of like some kind of form of phrase that identifies this James as a Ben Damnius, or related to this Jesus Ben Damnius that later is inserted into the high priest position. Now, the reason why I think that that's likely is because if in these types of situations, paying restitution to the family of the murdered victim, when the person's in a high position, public position, they will find like the closest relative and they will put them in that position. That's something that commonly happened at this point in time. And so the fact that a completely different Jesus that hasn't been identified yet is then placed in the high priest position, I feel like that's an indication that, this guy probably was referenced beforehand. And I mean, there's debate over this particular section, but I feel like there's enough problems on the on taking it literally side that kind of really does a lot of damage to the argument. I feel like the stronger argument is on some kind of accidental scribal interpolation that happened, because that happens throughout Josephus. Josephus has scribal interpolations in it, just like every other document that was hand copied, throughout the ages. So this is not some like crazy conspiracy claim or anything like that. This is just using the tools of textual criticism in order to try to identify a possible interpolation, and realizing that the way that it's structured is just doesn't make sense in this particular respect.
Okay, interpolations. And you're saying it's more likely that it's an interpolation because of an oddity. I see. Okay, I can't really answer to that. If you think it's an interpolation, and
well, I was just going to say it is a very specific argument that's used, and there are arguments against it. I don't want anybody to think that I'm like saying something as like a hard line. This is what it is. So there are arguments against it, and I know. Yeah.
I'm not accusing you of that.
Okay. Well, I wasn't thinking you were, but I didn't want anybody in the audience to be like, this motherfucker.
Yeah. Okay. So this James, and then the James in Galatians 1:9, and then the James in Galatians 15, and the James in the Galatians 2, none of those four references, you're saying none of that can point to a likelihood that there was a person named Jesus. They're all just muddled in with the legend.
Technically, that's not what I'm saying. Technically, what my position is that for Paul's references, Paul is being too vague in order to make a determination on the likelihood. So it doesn't help either position. And then, and I guess the same would go for Josephus, that, you can make an argument for the traditional reading of the Josephine James passage, but you can make an equally likely interpretation or explanation for the passage, which effectively renders it useless to us as making some kind of determination on the historicity of Jesus.
So if passages have legendary materials, it doesn't make it useless. It just means that we can't use everything. But you think Paul existed because we have these texts. So I don't know why you would throw out the text as, it's legendary, in order to verify the existence of a Jew named Jesus.
Well, no. So I'm not just throwing it out. I don't know if you mean for it to sound like I am somehow unjustifiably throwing it out, But what I'm actually doing is I'm giving you two different explanations that both work with the evidence that we have, and there's no good criteria to make a determination between the two as to which one's more likely. And so in that way, we can't use it for either position, which is as far as like investigating the historical Jesus. In that way, it's useless. I'm not saying how you summed it up. I'm saying that for our purposes in the investigation of a historical Jesus, we can't use it to make a determination either way because both sets of explanations work with the evidence that we have. Is that any more clear?
Yeah. Okay. Do we have more time, or you want to get to the other call? I have more to say, but I don't want to hog the time.
I know. We've went about 30 minutes. I do have a couple other callers in, and only about an hour left in my plans for the show. So let me let you go. But it was awesome talking to you. I plan on doing this more, so I'll definitely do a better job of getting this put out there earlier so that people can have some time to prepare themselves to call in.
All right.
Thank you so much, Andrew.
Nice talk.
Yeah, nice talking to you, dude. I hope you have a great night.
Thanks.
All right, bye. Okay, that was a great conversation. I love that conversation. We're going to be going to the next caller in queue. I do want to say that I really appreciated Andrew putting in the information there because he called in through the web so he could put in his information. So, but I'll just spend some time here right at the beginning with this next caller trying to get their information so I can get it properly put up on the screen and everything like that. So we're just going to keep trucking on. Next call. Hey there, caller. How you doing?
I'm doing well.
Awesome.
I would just like to say, speaking of hallucinations, I'm actually hallucinating right now, and I'm having visions telling me that I am, in fact, Jesus. And I challenge anyone to prove that I am not.
Okay. I mean, I feel like that's an unfalsifiable claim. I mean, there's obviously no way that anybody can disprove that you're Jesus right now.
Correct.
Right. So, but I mean,
Thank you for validating my point.
What point were you hoping to validate here? Like, is it just that nobody can prove
that
you're wrong?
That I am in fact Jesus.
Oh, no. That's not what I did. I did not validate that. What I did was I told you that your claim's unfalsifiable, meaning it's utterly useless to anybody. Like there's no way to verify it. There's just no way to do anything with that in order to actually suggest that you are Jesus. So there's no reason for anybody to actually believe that you're Jesus.
I agree. I just like it as the response to when you tell someone that Jesus is not real, they will say, well, prove it. Well, okay, I'm Jesus. Prove that I'm not.
Okay.
It's undeniable evidence either way. You can't prove that he is or isn't.
I agree. I would suggest anybody out there that says, oh, well, prove that I'm Jesus, and that is somehow an argument against anything. As far as it being an argument against something specific, yeah, I would agree that you probably could come up with better arguments against that. But if you're trying to do a reductio ad absurdum for some kind of statement that's being made, I feel like that's useful. I think showing the ridiculousness of somebody's statements or challenges is very warranted.
Correct, and I do agree that without saying, if I truly believed I was Jesus, I would probably need mental health care.
I can't say one way or another whether or not like you would need any kind of mental health care or anything like that. But I would advise if somebody was seriously believing that to probably seek professional help or at least get an opinion about it. So I
agree.
would implore them to do that.
I won't hold up your next caller. Thanks for taking my call, though. I'm enjoying the program.
Thank you so much for calling in. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
I hope
Yeah,
you have a
appreciate
great
it.
night.
Thanks. Yeah, you too.
All right, so we got one caller left in queue. So we're about to take that caller, and but if you would like to call in and challenge me on anything that I've said so far, whether it be Josephus or Paul's writings, I personally feel like Paul's writings are really where a lot of the stuff lies, like a lot of the issues lies. So those are the big contentious areas. But anyways, so we're gonna head right on into the next caller, and we're just gonna roll the dice here on this one. What's up, caller? How you doing?
Yeah, I wanted to talk about how you're defining atheism.
How I'm defining atheism. Okay, that's awesome. Well, first of all, I don't have the money to pay a call-in screener. So can you give me your name and your preferred pronouns?
Jimi, and whatever you want to put after that.
Okay. All right. So, let's start off with this. How would you define atheism?
Well, I interact with a lot of atheists, and the way I hear them define it is either not in a propositional sense, but in the sense of agnostic atheism. In other words, a state of psychology, state of mind.
Okay. All right.
A state of disbelief.
Right. So I would classify myself as an agnostic atheist. And technically what that means is that I don't know whether or not a God exists, but I don't believe one to exist. So I live my life as if one definitely does not exist. And so that's how I define atheism. I'm not convinced of the existence of any gods and therefore do not believe in them. But that is not a knowledge claim as to whether or not a God does exist.
Wouldn't you agree that if you define atheism that way, that you're ultimately defining it as simply as a psychological state of disbelief, where if you're going to consider that notion, that definition of atheism to be true, to be solely indicative of just a psychological state of mind, rather than something that whether it's not saying whether God is true or not. It's just solely speaking on state of mind. It's not propositional, in other words.
Yeah, I don't have any problem with that. I mean, I'm simply describing my current state of mind of whether or not I believe in God. Just like if somebody says, hold on. Just like if somebody says, I'm a theist, then that just means currently...
I can actually just make wine.
Currently, they just believe in God, and that's it. Like that's all that you can say about anybody that says, I'm a theist. Just like anybody that says, I'm an atheist, all you can say about them is, oh, they don't believe in a God. So it's literally just describing your state of mind in reference to whether or not you believe in a God. Atheism does not make any kind of, at least the agnostic atheism that I'm talking about, does not make any truth claims. It's just simply not being convinced that a God exists.
Yeah, so in other words, you're arguing that your definition of atheism is non-propositional in the sense that it can never be true except in the state, except to signify a state of psychology.
Right. Atheism is like me saying I'm an atheist is inherently true because I'm communicating what I don't believe in.
Yeah, you said that earlier.
Right. I don't understand why this
tell you-
concept is confusing to you. Like, I don't know why you're hung up on this. Do you want me to make like a specific like proposition? Is that what you're trying to get me to do?
So what I'm trying to tell you is that as long as you define it that way, you never make a propositional statement. Like, in other words, atheism can never be true in the sense that there is no God. It's only ever speaking on a psychological state of mind.
So,
okay, well, then you never make a proposition ever.
No, that's not true. Well, I mean, I guess it's true in the context of general atheists, like general atheism, like just somebody being an atheist. Yeah, sure, that's true. But it's not true to say you never make propositional claims, because I'll make one right now if you want to, and we can hash it out over that. Which particular God do you believe in?
I don't believe in any particular God.
Oh, okay. So you're an atheist too.
I'm not an atheist.
What do you believe?
I'm actually a perennialist.
Perennialist. What can you explain what that is?
In other words, the perennialist holds the position that there is a metaphysical truth that all the religions of the world, all the world's major religions adhere to, whether it be Buddhism, Hinduism, Christianity, and so forth. They just address it by various means, whether it be the Holy Spirit or Nirvana, Samadhi, so forth.
So is your statement, your proposition, all religions are true?
No, not necessarily.
Okay. Can you explain this like I'm 5? Like, imagine you're talking to a child.
Like you're 5 years old, like you're an elementary student.
Like I'm a 5-year-old child, and I'm like, "What's a perennialist?" Can you please explain it to me, like, and just simplify it as much as you can in the most basic of terms, in like a short sentence. Like, give me one short sentence that describes that position.
Well, it deals a lot with spiritual or mystical experience, and it's regarded as a phenomenon in consciousness that it's not exclusive to any single religion, so that the nirvana of Buddhism or the samadhi of Hinduism or the direct revelation of the Holy Spirit of Christianity are synonymous with one another.
Okay. So I did a Google search of it, and perennialism is a perspective in philosophy and spirituality that holds that certain truths are constant and unchanging. These truths are considered universal and are typically found in the realms of philosophy, mathematics, logic, and morality.
Yeah, well, thank you for Googling it. Yeah, you're getting closer, man.
Oh, okay. I'm closer, but I'm not there yet.
Yeah, not quite, because it does deal with, like I said, mystical experience.
Okay, so let me make sure I get this straight. I'm sorry, I'm having trouble grasping this. This is a new concept to me. So you don't believe that a God exists, but you believe in transcendental knowledge that exists outside of human
I never
experience.
said that I wouldn't necessarily say that I don't believe that a God exists. I think it's just regarded in a different fashion outside, an anthropomorphic interpretation.
Okay, so you're a deist.
Theist. I don't know if you said deist. No, I would categorize myself as theist.
You would not categorize yourself as a deist.
No.
So are you saying that reality is God? Like the just existence itself is?
I'm not a pantheist, if that's what you're hinting at.
I don't think I was going the pantheist route. I mean, I guess I've never really defined pantheist, but I don't think.
Well, then you're just being introduced, man. Look it up. Familiarize yourself.
Oh, okay. Yes. So that is pantheism. You're right. Okay, I got you now. I'm following you. on the pantheism part. I still don't know what in the fuck the perennialism thing, what you're trying to say about that.
Hey, well,
okay.
Okay. You know what? I'll call in another time, look it up, and we'll discuss it further the next time we encounter each other.
Well, okay. Let me before you go, if I can, let me ask you a couple questions. If I were to say Yahweh does not exist, would you disagree with me?
Yes, because Yahweh is interpreted within the perennialist view in a very particular fashion, not such like as an atheist might parody, the so-called mafia boss, guy daddy, malevolent bully. It's there's a more sophisticated understanding of the divine within this view that I want you to research. Maybe the next time we talk, we can discuss it.
Okay. Well, I mean, I understand if you want to get on out of here. And I appreciate your call and everything like that. But I would say just from because you started off the conversation asking about atheism, how to define it and everything like that. There's often nuanced positions as far as atheism goes. So like, if you're just going to talk about religion or God in general, I'm going to tell you that I'm an agnostic atheist because I don't know whether or not God exists.
I'm very familiar, man. I'm very familiar.
Okay. But
I'm very familiar.
Right. But if we were to talk about specific definitions of God, I would then become a Gnostic atheist, and I would make propositions. Like I would make concrete claims against specific definitions of God.
Yeah, I don't believe in Zeus. I'm, a Gnostic atheist against the notion of Zeus, so on and so forth. I get what you're saying.
Okay. Well, I feel like there's a bit of an uneven keel there, making a special claim for Yahweh, but not making the same kind of claim for
That's
Zeus.
not the case, I assure you. It's not a special case. It's not a special pleading. All I ask is look into it a little bit further, and I'll talk to you next time, man.
Okay, that's fine. We could definitely do that. I can't wait to hear from you again, okay?
All right, appreciate it, man. Thank you.
See ya. Okay, looks like we've got a caller that called in earlier today, but then had to drop off for a minute. We do have a couple lines open and more than enough balance in my account in order to handle some more callers. I've got about 45 minutes left for us to talk. So if you want to call in, please do. I would love to talk to you about whether or not Jesus existed, God exists, evolution is real, or maybe evolution is a tool of the devil. Just let me know what you want to talk about. So we got our next caller coming up. What is up there, caller?
Yeah,
how you doing?
Hi, good. Yeah, my name's Nate. You can say him.
Okay. Nate.
For pronouns if you like. So getting back to the actual subject of the stream here. So I was looking at a discussion that Myth Vision, what's his name, Kyle or something, is having with Richard Miller. Derek. Yeah, Derek and Richard Miller were on for an hour talking about how they thought there was this guy, is how they said it.
Right.
And they spent the hour talking about how, like, Richard respects that there are people who don't think there was this guy, but they spent the whole hour and they never actually suggested any concrete reason why they thought there was this guy.
Right.
And, we all agree that the TF and Josephus in general don't give us any reason. And Paul's talking about Adelphos doesn't give us any reason. And none of the second century hearsay business from like Pliny and Tacitus and whoever else don't give us any reason.
Right.
And so the question is, have you ever heard them actually offer any legitimate reason to believe that that there was this guy? Is it just personal preference?
Yeah, I've actually got a video on my channel, and I'm gonna try to find it right now. Well, I did a live stream with Derek where we talked about and discussed what he considers to be good evidence for the historical Jesus. Let me see if I can get it real quick. But in essence, what Derek and I'm not sure about Tim Miller. I haven't talked to him yet about it, but generally, I guess some of the more reasonable historicists out there, they usually bank on Paul's work, and then they will usually bank on Paul's work, and then the sources behind the Gospels is generally what I've heard from people. And I don't know if you know what I'm talking about with that.
Tim Miller, at least, and Derek seem to acknowledge that the Gospels and Acts are like wholly fictional. Right. So that doesn't give me anything to stand on. So it's like I haven't actually heard of any actual legitimate reason for them to stick to this position, as opposed to saying, well, there's at best there's no reason to think one way or the other.
Right.
And
well, I mean, where do you land on it?
Oh, I think it didn't exist, because if he had existed, somebody would have, feel like First Clements would have been citing things he said, and Paul would have been citing things he said, maybe. Like First Peter would have mentioned something about him, but the fact that
you have been blessed by Christ.
So,
now go forth.
Nobody seems at all interested in anything he actually said while he was alive until at least 45 years later. And actually, I don't know why people think that the religion was started in the 30s and not like about the time that when Paul and Peter started writing.
Okay, sorry, you were cutting out with that. I didn't catch that last bit. Can you repeat yourself?
But I just sorry, I probably should get somewhere where there's better reception here. Yeah, I don't know why people try to pin the beginning to like 30 or the early 30s.
Right.
Are they just like trying to provide enough time for there to be churches for Paul to have been writing letters to?
Well, no. So they generally put Jesus in the 30 to 33 time frame for a few reasons. Mainly that has to do with Passover, because typically those datings rely on like what the Gospels say about Jesus's crucifixion. And so he was either killed in 30 or 33 is generally when they place it, but that's because of when the Passover occurs and how the Gospels describe that. And so,
but if we don't assume it existed, then do we have any? And we don't count the Gospels. Then is there any objective reason to prefer putting him in the 30s and not like,
well, no,
sometime later?
Yeah.
Or not him, but beginnings of the church. Of course, the church. There are things we know, and one of the things we know is that there really was a church, or a Jesus cult, right?
Right.
And we know that it started at some point, and that we think Peter and Paul were involved in starting it.
Right.
Or maybe that Paul wasn't. Paul claims not to have been involved in starting it, but we don't know that he's telling the truth.
Well, I mean, we don't know, but I would say that the church that eventually was built, like the community of Christians that eventually was built, was definitely molded by Paul. So, I mean, whatever form it took before Paul had his hand in it, I think it was effectively changed after Paul got involved. So that's how I feel about that. As far as like nailing down like when Jesus was crucified, like if we were to assume that he was, typically, you know, with these kinds of things, you hear ranges of dates. And so obviously, with Paul writing in 49, there's no way that Jesus could have been crucified after that. And, Paul claimed to have been, already like, persecuting Christians and everything like that, and then turned Christian a long time before he wrote anything down. And so typically they date it in the, you know, first 30 years or so. Historians would probably place it like sometime in the early first century, prior to like 30 or 35 or something like that you would find a date range. But incidentally, there's nothing that would actually solidify that Jesus, you know, died in the first century CE. There's actually a record in the Talmud about a Jesus that sounds somewhat similar to the Jesus of the New Testament, but it's a completely different story. It's just like there was a Jesus that was killed for, you know, doing some kind of sorcery stuff, and his followers were killed and all this other stuff. But all of the details of that are completely different. And it happened like in 80 something BCE under King Janaeus. So obviously it's not, there's nothing that says, oh, it has to be in this time frame. I think that it could have happened like in any amount of time, like first century BCE to first century CE. And there definitely were Jewish groups out there that had predictions for when the Messiah would come. And so they were definitely like in that time frame, they were looking for somebody to come and proclaim to be the Messiah. So there was already this expectation that this Messiah would be coming.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So going back to the question of like, you know, when people think that there was, or that people think that there was a guy, is like, is there actually anything that they have to work with? I'm not hearing that there's anything but personal preference.
Yeah.
That's what you know about.
Yeah, exactly. Well, so the best that I've heard as far as like, and I would put Derek from Myth Vision in this camp of using what I think is the most contested but best evidence that you have for a historical Jesus, and that's the references in Paul, and then whatever sources that could have existed prior to the Gospels. Now, these are hypothetical sources, so that we can't scrutinize them and really know anything about them. But I mean, that's going to be one of your best pieces of evidence, like if those were to exist. But the fact that we don't have them and all we can do is hypothesize that they did exist, I feel like that's a pretty bad reflection on the evidence that we have for a historical Jesus.
Yeah, well, that kind of relying on evidence that doesn't exist strikes me as you know, special pleading. It's like, okay, let's invent some evidence and then rely on that evidence. Oh, yeah. It's not how you would argue anything else.
Well, and every like, so how Bart Ehrman will argue for it is that he invents a Q document, which is a document that precedes Mark or alongside Mark. And then he also posits a M document, or M source is what he says, because it's probably oral sources and written source. Then there's L source, and then there's the multiple sources that inform the Gospel of John. And then apparently there's also like some near eyewitness sources that inform like Ignatius and Clement and Hebrews or something like that. But I find that hypothesizing sources to make your conclusions work for you, for like your to make your conclusions work in general, I feel like that's a pretty bad methodology in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean it's completely bogus, and nobody allows that kind of reasoning anywhere else.
Yeah.
So you like, if you invent oral traditions or invent a Q source or what have you, you're just saying, well, I don't have anything to rely on, and I'm really clutching at straws.
I feel like you're clutching at straws.
It's really clutching at straws to hypothesize a document that would be evidence if it existed.
Mm-hmm.
And we just don't allow that kind of reasoning anywhere else.
Well, just to add a little bit of context. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I wanted to ask Derek and
Tim.
Richard Miller.
Oh, Richard Miller. Sorry,
Tim Miller.
Richard Miller.
Richard Miller. Yeah, but the stream was already over, and I was like, well, you keep up on these things. So if you had heard of anything that they, if there was anything else, you would probably know about it. Yeah. And you'd be able to tell me.
If you want to hear Derek's case, the case that he makes for a historical Jesus, like why he's convinced of it, I did put a link in the chat just now that you can hit up, and it's an interview that I did with Derek about it. So if you've got like an hour or so to kill, you can listen to that.
Yeah. Okay. Well, have you got any other callers waiting for it?
Yeah, I've got one more caller.
I'll let you get on to that caller then.
Okay, and hey, I'm planning on doing this a little bit more often, so I hope that you can call in again.
I will. Thanks.
All right. See you later, man.
Later. Bye-bye.
Bye. Okay, well, we're going into our last caller, and I think that this is actually going to be the last call that we can take tonight. Let's see if I can. Nope. Suspend new calls. All right, they're suspended right now. The new calls are suspended. Just for anybody that's thinking, hopefully this isn't a troll call. But I doubt it. But so just letting you guys know, in December I'm going to be on the line on December 18th, and then I don't know if I'll have a video for you guys on Monday. I took a small little vacation this weekend, and I don't know if I'll have anything for y'all on Monday, but I will be churning out some content this month. So that's what's coming up on the channel here, but we're going to go on ahead, jump into this next call. What's up, caller? How you doing?
Yeah, kia ora, brother. Ringing from New Zealand.
New Zealand.
I was thinking about that last.
What was your name again?
Andrew.
Andrew. Okay.
Yeah, cool. Calling from Auckland, New Zealand. One of the things the last caller actually touched on was what I was going to touch on, and that was to do with the dating of Paul and whether we can actually come to any proper conclusion that Paul was when he says he is. It's pretty phasey, much of his writing, and I'm one of the ones that's very interested in the idea that the Jesus of the Talmud could be what Paul is actually writing about, because then you have the destruction of Jerusalem, a lot of disruption. All Mark needs is to be able to pick up the letters. The letters aren't dated, and then to put his story around those letters. So, yeah, I'm of the view that it's not necessarily that it is the Jesus of the Talmud, but that there's a pretty good case to be put for that, and that the rest are dominoes that fall from Mark.
Okay, so your view is that the Jesus Talmud is the one that Christianity was based on, or did I mishear?
I think that has got equal probability, and that all we've got is Mark writing on the basis of letters from Paul, which then the dating of them is quite questionable in itself. So there's been a few people that have looked at that. I know Richard Carrier did quite a good little blog on the dating of Paul, but I don't think he put all the different things that I've heard from others put in, such as the names of towns that have changed and things like that. For instance, if I just mentioned Leningrad, then I'm probably from the Soviet era. If I mentioned St. Petersburg, I'm more likely to be modern. And there's some towns mentioned by Paul that are like that he seems to have a outdated name for. And there's a number of things. So I wish there was a bit more scholarship in terms of whether you can really date Paul to the time that people like Bart Ehrman and others confidently say this is when Paul was written, because there's nothing in Paul that necessarily places him there, and there's a lot of strange things about his trip to Damascus and escaping, and who was the king there, and the timing of the Pharisees. So I'm not necessarily falling into a camp, but what I am is saying that there's certainly a lot to be looked at, and that if Paul's not dated to where Ehrman says, then Mark, of course, is a fiction, which I believe is anyway, and the other Robert Price wrote on a good book on that. And so if everything is based on Mark writing it based on Paul, well, Paul could be written any time.
Well, so I typically fall in line with the general dating that's given for Paul, but I guess I really haven't I haven't really considered Paul writing earlier, but I'm not exactly sure if it really matters, which I feel like that's something that you said, that it doesn't really matter if Paul wrote, when most people think that he wrote. I typically just try to focus on like, what is the evidence that Paul gives? Because obviously, Paul did inform Mark, like you said. And so Paul seems to be the earliest source that we have, regardless of when he was written. And I guess, are you in agreement that the Talmud Jesus, the Jesus is talked about in the Talmud, existed like in around like 80 BCE or so?
Yeah. Between 180. So
yeah. So I know that
the characters. Sorry.
Well, I was just gonna say, I know that there is a sect of Christians. I can't remember what they're called right now, but Richard Carrier mentions it in his book when he brings up the Talmud evidence. But that there is a sect of Christians that seem to be that seem to have worshipped this Jesus under Janaeus, and so there's this different story.
And I think there's a number of sects that were in and around the area, and Mandaeans still base things a bit on John the Baptist, and it may be because of the destruction of Jerusalem and the growth of John the Baptist that Mark then turned the story around and dated it, tied it into the John the Baptist story. It's the dating of Paul, though, is not dependent. Well, it's become dependent on the Gospels. You take the Gospels away, you've then got to have a completely independent look in terms of dating of Paul. Deciphering the Gospels by R.G. Price doesn't argue for early Paul, but it's a very good book in terms of looking at the way that the dependence on Mark sort of then flows through to everything else we've got. And Mark was dependent on Paul, but the dating of Paul is is well, Mark writes in terms of crucifixion and all of that stuff, and Pilate and all of that, which can then date things, isn't really in Paul. So I think there's certainly enough of a question that further scholarship should be made, and the characters of Peter and James and John, they can be taken from the Talmud and other things. The characters are the ones that the people are the ones that Paul met. The characters are the ones that Mark then turned into just disciples or apostles. I mean, he just transferred the names into prequel of those characters.
Well, yeah, so I definitely agree that Mark invented like the disciples and a lot of the story elements there. So I mean, I'm not entirely in disagreement with anything that you've said so far. I guess the dating of Paul, I guess, is really the only thing that I disagree with. I just, I'll have to look into it more, I guess, but typically the dating of Paul, I side with the consensus on.
Yeah, look, I'm not saying a definitive either way. I'm saying that I'm not comfortable with the lack of strong evidence for the conventional dating of Paul, and I think that the evidence in terms of an earlier Paul has reasonable viability and should be looked at by people, with more time, energy, and skill than myself. So, I believe that it is a question such as Richard raising, the existence of Jesus, which I agree entirely with him. I've read his book, his big book. I agree with him on that, and I think that an earlier dating of Paul has enough on it that it should be given a question mark to the conventional dating, and that there should be more research done in terms of an earlier dating.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I could definitely agree with, continuing to research that, look into that and everything. And like, keep up to date on the scholarship surrounding that, because, the thing about the biblical scholarship and New Testament scholarship is that, it's always changing. So you can't just like with computer and software engineering, you can't just learn it once and then you're set for life on it. It's a constant pursuit of knowledge. So I definitely want to heavily advise people to constantly pursue, knowledge of these things, constantly, question the established status quo and all this other stuff. So, I'll keep a lookout for, different arguments for Paul being earlier and how that might affect things. But, me personally, I just sort of look at just very hyper focus in on the question of, whether or not there was a historical person, whether that historical person was like 100 years prior, and then Paul was writing sometime after that about that person. Like, I just think that Paul, and I know you agree with this by what you had said earlier, but Paul just seems to be talking about a celestial being and not like any actual historical person.
Yeah, absolutely. But the point of the Talmud, Jesus, is, it simply means Saviour, and we don't know where that was derived from, or whether that was also made up from a celestial figure as well. But anyway, my view is that more research would be good. But your work's brilliant, as is the stuff from Derek. I actually come from a background where I don't think I've ever been a religious adherent or a believer in Christianity, but found myself ill at home a while back and started watching a few of the channels, and I think showing respect to the development of what I would say is the development of myth, and the ability to actually sustain a 2,000-year-old belief on what I think is flimsy evidence. I find it fascinating, and I find the stories and analysing the stories fascinating. But not ones that I could believe in. Anyway, you have a good one, and also pass on to your partner that your take on Vivaldi, is the shooting in Texas, was absolutely spot on. For those that live outside of America, quite often think that all Americans are of a certain type, and what you put through in terms of that look at the shooting there, I thought showed anger and compassion, and certainly for someone not in America, it showed me that there's some hope in America in terms of where a liberal voice is. So thank you guys for that.
No, that means a lot that you said that, because that me being from the North Alabama, here in the deep South, like that there's a lot of people that are crazy about guns here and everything like that. But and I'm not immune to that. When I was young and dumb, I was a little bit crazy like about guns, not in the way that causes mass shootings or anything, but like. I had a more conservative view of guns, but as soon as I exposed myself to the greater like world, greater community and everything like that, like I couldn't anymore. So, but yeah, no, I really appreciate you saying that and everything. And, I think it's awesome that you watched me and that I was able to, that we were able to sort of, I guess, inspire a little bit of hope that not all of America is going down in flames. So I appreciate that, really.
Okay, sweet ass brother. You guys have a good one in North Alabama. Don't know much about it other than Levi and Helm came from somewhere down that way. But you guys enjoy the rest of your day. It's right. Where are we? It's about 2:30 here in the afternoon. Okay, brother.
All right, man. You have a great rest of your day and everything, and I will see you later, okay?
Okay, sure.
Bye. All right. Well, that's going to be it for the shows. I'm going to go ahead and end the show now. Confirm end show. Ending show. There we go. We're done. Hey, that only used up like $6. All right. So, if anybody wants to know anything about Alabama, just think fucking your sister and Confederate flags. Like, that's all you really got to know about Alabama. Of course, you could say that for Mississippi too. Confederate flags and fucking your sister. Like, I mean, those are the things Alabama's known for, just in case you're wondering. We do have super chats. Sorry that I blew past a whole bunch of them. Drew's Book Reviews said, my uncle once told me an apostle is someone who saw Jesus in person as a special witness and believed LDS apostles have seen Jesus in person. That's interesting. There's a lot of people out there, Andrew. I don't know if Andrew's still around. Maybe he'll watch later, but it's interesting because a lot of people mistake apostle for being disciple, and at least in the context of the Bible, disciples very specifically not an apostle. Disciples are those that physically followed Jesus and were part of his ministry prior to his death. That's what a disciple is in the Bible. Apostles are those that experienced the risen Jesus afterwards and were given the commission to go out and turn people Christian. So that's the difference between apostle and everything like that. So it's interesting that the Mormons see it that way. But thank you so much there, Drew. She likes Dixon's cider. Jesus was definitely born. He works downtown as a chef, and I'm sure that Jesus makes like the best shit out there. I don't know this particular person, but I'm sure that they are a great chef. Daniel M says, David says, good night. I know that this was a little bit ago. I don't know if David's still watching, but David, I hope you have a great night, a great weekend. And, tomorrow I'm getting a mani-pedi. I do that every 2 weeks, by the way. I get mani-pedis. It's a manly thing. Also, it really helps because I'm diabetic and getting like my shit checked out, making sure my toes aren't falling off. Like that's helpful too. But it's totally manly to get a mani-pedi. I'm just saying, like you got to trim your shit up. Anyways, and then Donald Trump's 116 indictments became a member, which they said that they let their stuff lapse. I think that might be knee in the chat there. But anyways, I hope I'm glad that you guys enjoyed it. I know I did. I hope that I can do this more often so I can practice and maybe convince Jimmy to let me on the show more. And I guess I will see you heathens later. Don't forget that Dr. Bart Ehrman definitely thinks the Son of Man is a cosmic figure that revealed himself to Paul. So there's a little bit thing that you know now. Anyways, heathens, I'll see you guys later. Don't forget to stand up, use your voice, and all that kind of good shit. Bye, everybody.